this video, we're going to take a look at refining the feet a bit, and we won't get all of the feet done in this video, but we'll just get it started. So the first things to look at on the feet are the takeoffs and the landings. So on the landing here, that foot settles so slowly, right? It's up on the heel, and it softly comes down to a flat foot right there. It takes so long to get there. Here's a reference. Again, this is slow motion, so it's a little tough to compare apples to apples in terms of frames. But here you can see there's the contact. Right? The foot hits the ground. One, two, three. All right, so it's 3 frames in slow motion to get that foot flat on the ground. But you can see it's flat on the ground a long time before the passing position, right? And at passing position, that ball starts to get activated. You see the heel of the foot start to come up. It's already coming up onto the ball of the foot, right? So let's leave it like that for now. And so let's just take a look at how this needs to work. So this is contact, and you can see the heel ball is at -2. I would say the next frame, because again, that last one was in slow motion, took 3 frames. On this one, heel ball, just zero it out right there. So that's a quick snap down. Boom, the foot's on the ground. And the foot generally should stay on the ground until the passing position, right? We saw that passing position, the foot was still flat, and then it started raising up on that. So another key at the passing position. So now the foot hits the ground, stays on the ground, and then starts rolling up onto the ball of the foot right there. And this, like, I clearly have some problems with the knees. I'm going to address those in another video. And in general, I've been leaving the knees out of this because it's best to get everything else in place and then worry about getting those pops out of the knees. They're one of the biggest things to deal with, and they take the most detail. But the problem is if you focus on the knees early on and then decide, okay, I need to shift the hips, or I need to move it up and down a tiny bit, or whatever it is, that breaks what you've done with getting the knees to stop popping. So leave that knee pop to the end. Let that be the last thing that you look at in refining a walk. But in this case, like, I've got the foot slapping down to the ground and then coming off here, and then I would say it releases from the ground too early. This is an important thing to look at, but let me just fix both feet here. So this would now be heel ball 0. That's going to hold until the passing position. It'll be 0. All right, so both feet will now feel like they have better contact with the ground. You can see that already makes a difference. All right, now you can also add in some drag. This is a common place to add drag in. So let me just grab this guy, and we'll start with that since it's one moving forward here. So on the takeoff, there's not really going to be any drag. So until the foot kind of releases from the ground, I would say don't put any drag onto that toe. So I'll just say somewhere around there. I'll key it, and that'll hold that position. In fact, I'll move it 1 back. All right, so I've got that, and then maybe by here, 6 or 7, I'll add a little bit of drag into that toe, and it just depends again how cartoony, right, do you want it to be. Like that pull forward, you can see that toe drags back through there. Looks pretty good. It might be a little too cartoony for a really generic walk, but it's okay for this. Let me just again drag that a little bit more here. And then in this position, I would say we're probably already going to be in more of a drag up, so that it would reverse. So it's not as strong as it would be, and probably don't even need a key there. And this is one of those things to like clean up a little bit. But maybe a key there, and then the next frame, it's 0, right? So you drag progressively up, and then this is the same thing as that deadfall. The heel hits, the ball hits, the toe hits. Boom, 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 like 1 frame after the next. And so just watch that back foot, and let's see what we get out of that. Right, so it's pretty floppy. It's not super noticeable, but it's there. It's definitely I think it might call a little more attention to itself than I initially wanted it to, but that gives a good idea of how that works. And then here I would just take a look back at this and just clean up the curves where it doesn't look like you need those extra keys. That looks fine. And let's take a look at that toe up down. So here's a place right here where we probably don't need all of these adjacent. We definitely need that and that because this is the up position. and the next frame we want that down. But this right here, this will look substantially similar, and I don't really care exactly where that toe is in this. I just want it to be transitioning from dragging back to dragging up on that on the foot descent there. All right, so something like that. And again, if you feel like you've really, overdone it, just pull those things up. This is barely out of frame. I apologize. So just pull those up a little bit, sort of diminish the effect. Same thing here. All right, and so just reduce that overall. All right, so that basically works on that back foot, and I would do the same thing on the right foot. That gives a good general idea here. And then the next thing that I want to take a look at is getting the feet off of the perfectly flat straight ahead. So right now there's no hip shift back and forth. The hips are just straight on. And the feet stay straight on underneath the body, but they don't come in and out. So if the hips aren't going to move so much, it's because the foot lands a little bit more centered, and the contact foot stays a little bit more centered to the body. Otherwise, if the feet are really wide spread apart, then the hips need to shift back and forth to get the weight over that foot. You don't have to shift the hips in any kind of extreme way. You can handle it with the feet, which I'll show you here, but you can also shift these hips, right? So as it comes up, especially here into a passing position, this is a place where you can shift the hips over the foot like this. Too much of this, and your whole body will be flopping all over the place, and it will not look right. So I'm gonna leave that out for right now, and I'm just gonna play with doing this with the feet. So in order to do that, because you can see that this feels more balanced over that foot, right? Just kind of shifting it out like that. The other way to do that is to shift the foot in when it lands. But remember that a foot, once it hits the ground, it shouldn't animate at all. So that means that when this hits here, it should be that position on X until I release that foot. And so let's take a look at doing that, as well as like just kind of breaking the feet up a little bit. They're so perfectly like CG straight ahead. Like everything is perfectly in line with the Z-axis here, and that's not ideal. That's not very realistic. So let's take a look at first breaking that up, and then breaking up the left to right part. So let's see here. So what I'm going to look for here is the rotate. So you can see that in this particular case, I'm not doing anything with rotations at all. And so I don't really need those to be animated. I just want them to hold a position. We may end up animating them as we start futzing around here, but I would say in this particular case, edit, delete by type static channels. Right, you can see that we only really have 3 channels of animation that we're doing anything with right now. So edit, delete by type, static channels. The thing you have to remember though is if you delete static channels and you end up adding animation on one of these channels, you're going to have to do the cycle again because there's no animation curve input right now, so it's not going to cycle. So even though everything else is cycling, that'll do it one time and then stop. So you just got to remember to go back and add that cycle to any new information that you add. So for the foot, let's see. So what I would say is maybe this foot sort of as more something like this. And you can see that because I have the pole vector following the foot, as I rotate the foot, this comes out, which means that now when the knee bends, the knee will be out a little bit, which will probably look good. And let's just try here, same thing. I'll just kind of give them both a little bit of a twist, something around 10 degrees or so, and let's see what that does to the walk. So you can see that the knees are out more now. In general, that's already starting to help. And now let's bring the foot in so that it rides a little closer to center. Um, so let's take a look here. So whenever the foot's in contact with the ground, I'm going to pull that in, and then it will actually move back out. So let's see where we are here. So in the passing for this one here, I may end up shifting that around a little bit off of 0. So I'll just leave it like that for now, and we'll just move it, see where we get. So this stuff, all these changes that I'm making like this, all of this stuff has an effect on what happens to those knees, and that's why I'm saying like don't even bother coming in here until you've got the walk doing what you want it to do pretty much everywhere. So that's not animated. It's just he's stepping forward and in. I would say that might be little bit more of an in, but you can see that in general, like that, this when this is on the ground underneath him, it feels more centered. I would say the hips could probably come out a little bit, and this could come in a bit, but I'd say this might just be a little too strong. Let me just go down to 0.3 and see if that's enough. Maybe 0.25. Okay, so I'll just bring the foot into something like this, and that is getting the foot under the body, and I feel like that will probably be good enough. So what I want to do though is hold it in that position, that 0.25. I'm going to go ahead and key it here at the beginning and again at the end, one frame off here. Right, there's no other animation right now, so I can just straight click it. And then here, when it's in contact again, it needs to be in exactly the same position. So that's important because here, when the foot's in contact, it should not move. It should not animate at all on translate X until it releases from the ground. And then here we have now the liberty to kind of shift this thing whichever direction we want. So I'll shift it out a little bit. So now when it comes up, it'll swing out and then back in. Right, so something like that helps get those feet off of being perfectly straight. Let me just take a look at that leg one more time here. Right, it could definitely be exaggerated further, but that's the basic idea. And you see those knees kind of popping all over the place again. Resist the urge to go in and fix those. They will get fixed in the long run. They just don't need to be fixed right now. All right, I'm going to watch that I don't have a intersect here. They're okay. It looked like from that angle that the hand was going through the leg, but it's not. Okay, all right. So that's a good basic thing about getting those off of center. I would do the same thing for this foot. And again, as far as the hips go, this is the time where I'm looking sort of at the balance here. You can push the hips over a little bit. It looks like what I did here. Let me see if I cut this off. No, this one's fine. So I can go to translate and just kind of shift those over. So at the contact position, the hips should be pretty much right in the center, which they are. But at the passing position, we'd want it to be a little bit more over the foot. So just a small shift out there, and then go over here to 18 at the other passing position. Small shift out here, and again, this foot needs to come in, so I'll go sort of square that up. But I would say that these, in general, are going to be opposite each other. So whatever we decide here, 0.2. Whoops, my goodness. There we go. Negative 0.2, and then this one is going to be 0.2. Right, so these will just sort of flow a little bit. And then obviously the start and the end, you can see this side is nice and smooth and all the repeats look terrible. So we'll grab these guys and just make sure they have a good flow around them. And so that will now shift the hips back and forth. That adds quite a bit to it. It definitely helps to shift those hips around to get the feet underneath. And again, I'll move this foot in. You can see that this foot moves in and out. It could be exaggerated further, but that's the basic idea. I'll just grab that in another video. The feet, though, have other things that I want to mess with, and I'll do that in another video just so this one doesn't get so long. And plus, I need to show two different versions of doing this. But the key thing that I want to get at with that video is in this contact. Let me go step back here. Here's contact. Now the front foot is still on the ground and the back foot is still on the ground. Right? The back foot's still on the ground. The back foot probably releases right there. So that is a long time that both feet are on the ground at the same time. I would say that at least 2 more frames the back foot should be on the ground. Both feet are on the ground at the same time for quite a few frames of this slow motion one. And right now what we have in our animation is both feet are on the ground. Let's go to passing here, and then immediately that one lifts up and starts coming away. So this actually is releasing from the ground and sort of sliding at that point. And it's easier to see if this is muted. So with that muted, you'll see this. From 12 to 13, you can see that foot already start to move forward there. It's not bad because the way that the rotation is working with the toe, it's coming up over that, but this is actually being animated. You can see this is actually going up, so you can see it going up, and it's actually moving forward as well. So that's already loose from the ground right away at 12. And what we want to do is hold that foot for a few more frames, and I'll do that in the next video.